All right. We got PFL 2021, number 8. Last week, number 7, surprisingly went 10-0. Not going to lie, a little bit of a shocker, simply because it's PFL. Who the fuck knows? But 8 favorites, 2 underdogs. That made out the 10-fight card. Did we get lucky on maybe that Rush Manfio decision? Maybe, but it was a close fight. We knew Rush Manfio was always in close fights. His prior 2 were both split decisions. This one was a split decision. People thought they got the Anthony Pettis fight wrong. People thought they got this fight wrong. The main thing is being on the right side of the shitty decision. So we'll definitely take that one in the great graces of the MMA gods. For this week, we've got men heavyweights and women lightweights, also known as men heavyweights and women heavyweights. So yeah, what are you going to expect, right? There's going to be a couple knockouts that you might not see coming. There's going to be some poor performances that we might not see coming. The main thing is to try to get those fights that we're just not quite sure about on the bottom. The ones that we like, keep them near the top. Obviously, there's also a Bellator card this week. There's a UFC this week. So again, it could be another good weekend to mix and match and just hopefully not have that one apple pie shitter. Jumping into things, you've got Kayla Harrison versus Janah Fabian. What do you want to know about this? What do you want to know about this one? I mean, everybody's on the same page. There's no money to really be made here. You're probably going to go Kayla Harrison inside the distance, just if anything, but she's a minus 1,600 favorite. She's pretty much a minus 1,600 favorite in all of her fights. In fact, she'll go off as a minus 2,000 favorite, as she usually does in all of her fights. And then she typically goes there and looks the part. She's never lost a round. She's never even really lost a moment. Striking is a work in progress, but it's her ability to just rely on that judo. And unlike a Ronda Rousey had that huge advantage and used it to great effect, similar to Kayla Harrison, but Ronda got the fights done really quick. It seems like Kayla Harrison can extend these fights, go into a second round, go into a third round, and keep getting these takedowns and establish top control and this and that. So she's becoming a star in the sport simply because she's 10-0. They got nobody to fight her, but again, it's such a thin division. Eventually, she'll probably run into that Holly Holm, or eventually she will run into that Amanda Nunes like Ronda did. Not saying those exact girls, just saying that situation. But Janah Fabian's not either one of those. She's a girl that's 4-1, comes from a kickboxing base. Hell, she made her pro boxing debut just 5-6 months ago. She is, in every word, a striker, and that's going to be to her detriment because if anything, with Kayla Harrison, you got to be able to survive off your back. You got to be able to stuff some of these takedowns, and you got to have that huge striking advantage. Not saying that Janah Fabian doesn't have that striking advantage. It's just not going to be enough. Now, she had briefly flirted with the idea of leaving MMA altogether. She lost a fight to Bobby Joe Dalziel a few years back. Again, when she is on her back, doesn't really have great ground game. But since coming into the PFL tournament this time around, there's nobody to fight. And so as a result, you get a couple low-level competitors. You win. You get points. You end up in this playoff format. But it's all set up to eventually run into Kayla Harrison, in which nobody's been able to overcome the task. The only person that's really come close, and I shouldn't even say close, but at least survived to tell the tale, would be Larissa Pacheco, who we'll talk about also on this card. And it's just like, Harrison's got her number 2. So interesting spot. No, not interesting spot, I should say. Very uninteresting spot. We got a minus 1,600 favorite. The value side would obviously be the plus 900 on Fabian, but I don't see it happening. So no, I'm not going to take that poke myself. It'll be Kayla Harrison. And on a 10-fight card, if you're just doing a PFL parlay, which, again, I suggest you do just a PFL parlay, just a Bellator parlay, just a UFC parlay, and then mix and match. That way, if one of them blows up, it doesn't kill everything for you. But as far as the 10-fight parlay goes, what does a minus 1,600 really juice up on your parlay? It's like nothing. Hardly anything at all. If you have a book that offers 12, 16, 18-fight parlays, yeah, it's going to juice it up because the more you put, the 1,600 eventually factors in mathematically. But yeah, as far as our purposes here, there's just not enough meat on the bone. But I'm not going to be a contrarian here and say that Kayla Harrison tastes defeat for the first time. I think she's probably just going to roll up like she normally does. Bruno Cappelozza versus Jamel Jones. Bruno Cappelozza currently about a 2-1 favorite. Come back on Jamel Jones about plus 150, plus 165. This one's super interesting. First and foremost, the under 1.5 probably looks pretty good. It's currently at minus 145, and I say that simply because Bruno Cappelozza is an absolute madman. 32 years old, throws everything into everything. Now, keep in mind, this is a man with 12 wins, 5 losses. Those 12 wins, all 12 by knockout, usually in the first round. In fact, he hasn't left the first round, oh boy, in about 4 or 5 years. I'm not saying he's a one-round fighter. It's just the kind of pressure that he puts on guys. He's either going to break you or you're going to chin check him. And to that effect, 12 wins, all wins by knockout, is 5 losses. One of them is by disqualification. He got disqualified for illegal shots. Again, wild man, gets in there, does what he's got to do. They were legal shots. That was way back in the day. I wouldn't worry about him doing it again. But then those other 4 losses, all of them inside the distance, 2 by knockout, 2 by submission. When he does get finished, he generally gets finished within a round. His last 3 fights, his last 3 losses, again, usually coming in pretty early. He went to Japan and Ryzen, mixed success there, but was fighting a very top level. Comes to PFL, not expected to do a whole much. So he draws Ante in the first round, and he's a plus 375 underdog, coming off a loss to Yuri Prochazka, who we see in the UFC now kicking absolute ass. But he got knocked out by Yuri in a minute 23. So he was not expected to do much in this PFL tournament. Comes in as a plus 375 underdog and goes out there and knocks Ante at 46 seconds. Huge, huge. Then they give him Mo DeReese, and it's like foregone conclusion with his style. Mo's probably going to fall victim to the fire. Mo does not like the fire. Bruno is the fire. Yeah, and he knocks out Mo DeReese. So we know he's going to be a banger. He's going to go out there. He's going to let it go. But at 2-1 odds, the one issue you're running into is, again, he's not finding a smart game plan. He's fighting a game plan that clearly does work for him, but there's a lot of flaws in said game plan. And now it should work against Jamel Jones. It really should. Jamel Jones is another one of these guys that just doesn't really have the durability. These are his last 3 losses. First round knockout to William Knight, who's in the UFC now. First round knockout to Mike Rodriguez. That was on Dana White's Contender Series. Mike Rodriguez then went to the UFC. And Ultimate Fighter veteran Anton Berzin, who knocked him out in the second round, right? Prior to that, he had also been knocked out trying out for a tough season 23 against Myron Dennis, who is a striker, a 205er. If the durability is not quite there and Bruno's going to come and put this massive amount of pressure on you, like, what's there to like? Does Jamel Jones got a deep gas tank he can rely on and hopefully like weather that early storm from Bruno and take over late? Like, not really. He himself is a bit of a front runner. However, the one thing he does have is he was a standout high school wrestler, solid enough collegiate wrestler, and was like good friends and former wrestling partners with Jordan Burroughs, multiple-time Olympic champion, one of the best to ever do it. So he does have that wrestling in his back pocket. And again, he came into this tournament short notice, didn't fight in round 1 because he wasn't included in the tournament. Due to injury, he gets slotted into the second round, takes on Clifton Abreu and catches him. Abreu's fighting, I believe he put on like 65 pounds in between him fighting at middleweight and him now moonlighting as a heavyweight. Hadn't fought in a while. Probably wasn't in good shape. Jamel Jones was able to capitalize. Can he do that again against Bruno? I don't know. But the fact that he's got that wrestling does make it interesting because Bruno's just looking to bomb on you. So why would you want to stand in front of this guy and strike? Ante's problem was he stood in front of him. Mo DeReese's problem was he stood in front of him. At least in this scenario, potentially Jamel Jones gets his fight to the ground. Bruno starts to get tired, and he's got Jamel Jones on top of him. Jamel Jones probably a bit of a more refined grappler, right? He's got the wrestling advantage. He's a little bit more top-heavy. He's super motivated to be in this tournament because he came out of left field, won one fight, but because it was a knockout, got 8 points. He's in the playoffs. He wins this thing. He's going to fight for $1 million. Like, very, very interesting for Jamel Jones. So it's not that I'm going to go against Bruno, but at 2-1 with his style, very dangerous, very dangerous. Now, the foregone conclusion should be this fight doesn't go the distance or at least the under 2.5, but those aren't great prices. The under 1.5 is minus 145. And to that regard, Bruno either storms him and knocks him out and you hit the under 1.5, or Bruno storms out, dies trying, and likely hit the under 1.5 as well. But as we saw from that, Gorder versus Bastayev fight on Bellator last weekend, like foregone conclusions of inside the distances don't usually always play out that way. A bum beat for Rockstar Z, man, because otherwise he had a great read on that one. Moving down, we got no, we don't. Moving down, we got Larissa Pacheco versus Taylor Gaurdado. Again, this one's going to be a no meat on the bone fight, I believe. The official odds currently are minus 400 for Larissa Pacheco, come back at plus 265. Again, this is all depending on your book because I'm seeing lines vary between minus 330 Pacheco to minus 450 Pacheco. Just depends what your book is. Likewise, on Gaurdado, plus 265 price tag, that's not enough. You'd want them much better on that. But if they're giving you plus 350, it's like, yeah, why not? So again, I think Larissa Pacheco is the truth in that this girl has had a hell of a rough run to her career in general and just perseveres and makes a lot of improvements. She was a laughing stock of MMA, man. Comes into the UFC, just looks out of place. She's got platinum blonde hair. She's just a kid. Shouldn't be at this level. And then draws Jessica Andrade as debut. Like, what an absolute joke that is, right? Gets submitted in the first round and no harm done. The key here is that she was 6 days past her 20th birthday. So less than a week prior, she turns 20. 6 days later, she's fighting Jessica Andrade in the UFC. So pretty understandable. 1, she's just a kid. 2, it's Jessica Andrade. Her next fight, they give her Jermaine Durand to be like, what? Who's matchmaking these fights for this poor girl, right? Jermaine Durandamy went on to win a bogus title, but regardless is solid, can fight at 145. Great kickboxing pedigree. Very, very tough opponent and more experienced than Larissa Pacheco. So again, she gets knocked out in the second round of that fight. And again, where you give her a pass, the UFC releases her. And again, she's like the laughingstock of MMA. But why? Why? Just 20 years old. Isn't there some upside? She fought some really talented girls. She follows that up by being Carol Rosa, currently in the UFC. Had a brief stint on The Ultimate Fighter where she lost to the eventual champion, Macy Chiasson. Signs a PFL, loses to Kayla Harrison, who just cleans up these tournaments on the routine. But I mean, she's still only like 23 years old at the time. So then you start seeing it. The Bobby Joe Dalziel fight. Man, her grappling looked pretty slick in that fight. Gets a first round armbar. Goes out there against Sarah Kaufman. Cashes as a plus 225 underdog against Sarah Kaufman. Hustles her up. Can't get taken down. Striking, vastly improved. Now she's filling out. She was fighting in the UFC at, 130. She lost to Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade fights at 35. Not a big 35er, by the way. Fights at 25, sorry. Fights at 15. You loses to her, but again, it's like she was young at the time. Now she's filling out her own frame, and it's like now she'd be a problem for those smaller girls, and she's proving that, right? Sarah Kaufman maybe a little bit over the hill, but you see it's not a passing of the torch, but one girl's kind of getting older as a savvy veteran, and you got Pacheco making improvements. Sure, she loses to Kayla Harrison again in the rematch, but important to note that she went the distance with her both times. The second one being a 5-round title fight. So were they both 5-round title fights? No. The second one being a 5-round title fight. So that in itself is a feather in your cap. So how does she fare against girls not named Kayla Harrison? She just goes right back on the winning path. Beats Julia Pajic, first round opponent, 51 seconds, easy money. That last one against Helen Kolesnik, I didn't think she looked great early, but the result was the same. She landed a beautiful two-piece left hook to a right, straight right. Boom, absolutely knocks out Kolesnik out cold. Did it look like she was getting a little bit fatigued? Does it look like she's, in the greatest shape? Maybe not. But I do think she's making improvements. So she's still only 26 years old. She always seemingly makes it to the finals of these tournaments where she loses a decision to Kayla Harrison. So that's kind of what I'm expecting to happen here. Taylor Gaurdado, she's been around the game a long time, and you consider she made her amateur debut in 2009. As an amateur, she beat Raquel Pennington from UFC fame, former title challenger. She she beat Raquel Pennington. She lost to Ronda Rousey as an amateur. She beat Amanda the Lady Killer Bell. Got Ashley Evans Smith. These are all girls that went on to somewhat promising careers. Ashley Evans Smith made it to the UFC, promising enough. Amanda Bell, multiple-time Bellator veteran, Invicta veteran, promising enough. But then after that, from 2009 until 2011, that's her amateur career. She just drops right off. Took 9 years off, had a kid. She's married to one of the coaches at Extreme Couture. And just kind of was out of the spotlight. So Invicta drops an opportunity to fight in a one-night tournament. And because she's been on for so long, she doesn't need a slow route approach. She needs to get shot right in there. So she jumps into a one-night tournament, makes her debut in a one-nighter. And the first two fights are considered exhibitions. So she wins the first two, both of which are exhibitions. Now she's in the finals of this tournament, and she loses a decision to Tanisha Tenen. That drops her 0-1 as a professional. Now she's in a PFL tournament as a 0-1 professional who's had one fight in the last 10 years. Crazy nonsense, really. But there's just nobody in the division. There's nobody in the class. So she defeats Helena Kolesnik and Laura Sanchez, and both times she does the exact same thing, right? Both of them are both strikers. I mean, you got Kolesnik as a Ukrainian kickboxer, decent enough, but pretty much all she wants to do, keep the fight standing, use her kickboxing. And Taylor Gaurdado, she's got a big hind end on her. She's got a good build, big, thick downstairs, and just presses her. I always call it like a big caboose. She generates a lot of power off it. She just presses these girls into the cage, and they just don't have the experience level to get out of the way. So she's able to just grind them. If she can get you to the ground, great. But if she can't, she's just going to control you up against the cage. She does that against Helena. She did it against Laura Sanchez. Again, Laura Sanchez is 6 feet tall and most definitely a striker, better boxer if anything. But you can press her up against the cage. She didn't look good against Sanchez. Might have been 1-1 going into the third. But she had enough cardio and enough perseverance to just go back to the game plan, grind her up, get the takedowns if need be. If she couldn't get the takedowns, grind this thing down to a bog. And she did it to great effect, won that third round, sealed the deal for the fight, wins it in total. But I don't think you could fool yourselves and say that she's looked particularly good. She's only 30 years old, and she trains in one of the best gyms in the world, so there's no reason fighting 3 times a year, and then in between, improving on different skills and going into camps for specific opponents. This, you don't know who you're fighting. So it's not like you're really improving in any one area of the sport. Now you win a fight, you don't know who your next opponent is till they win their fight, right? You don't know if this opponent's going to pull out with an injury. I mean, it comes down to fight time. It comes down to weigh-ins half the time before you know who's even on the card, right? And they're 8 weeks apart. They're 7 weeks apart, right? Some of these guys are getting like 6, 7 weeks. Better experience. She's got much better striking than the aforementioned two ladies. And I think that when those takedowns failed to materialize in the second and third round, it seemed Pacheco personally is going to be like a smothering type game plan. I'd rather her keep the fight standing, create space, get away, use that jab, use your reach, use your length to the best of your abilities. And let's not lie, Pacheco has some big power, so land those big eye-appealing shots that the judges are going to like and hopefully seal the deal for this victory. I don't think Pacheco ends up being a top ticket play for me, but surely, given her track record, we got to think that she's going to be near a top ticket play as far as our PFL stuff goes anyways. Denis Golstov versus Ante Deljia. I always struggle with his last name, and I shouldn't because he's my Croatian brethren, but we're mostly itch type peoples. You know, I'm a Saftic. You get a Pedjic. You get a Filipovic. You know, in this case, like Ante's as Croatian as it gets. Grew up with a ton of them. But the last name, I always screw it up. Anyways, him versus Denis Golstov. Ante comes into the tournament. He was supposed to be a world beater. I mean, this guy's got legitimate experience. Last loss was to Marcin Tybura, who is like a top 8, top 7 heavyweight in the UFC right now. Like, seriously kicking some ass on the world's grandest stage. So right there, it's like, okay, that fight was at heavyweight as well. Good stuff that you can like out of him. Signs to the PFL organization after a successful run in Japan. And he's winning fights. Goes to KSW while they were in Croatia, but it was a KSW card, full production value. Beats UFC veteran Ollie Thompson, knocks him out in the second. Good stuff to like from Ante, right? Now he's in the PFL tournament. We've already talked about Bruno in the big upset, but it was a huge upset for Ante as well. He's a minus 540 favorite. Supposed to walk through this guy. Grappling advantage, cardio advantage. Guy's super durable. You know, he lost that fight to Tybura, but it was a leg injury, right? Outside of that, you know, solid durability, big body, good experience level. And Bruno just bombed on him. So at the time, killed me, man. I went with my Croatian brethren. Lost money on that night. But I remember thinking, you know what? If we were going to give him a pass, Bruno bombs on guys. So it was a poor game plan to stand in front of him. But what are you going to do? It happened in all less than a minute. He never really got going. Maybe he was a little bit rusty coming in. He hadn't fought officially going into that fight in almost 2 full years. He's getting a little bit older. You give him a pass because Bruno's a bomber. It's the next fight. The next fight that I draw some serious issue with against Chandler Cole. So I got an inside guy. Hits me up. Can't give his name. Said don't give his name away specifically. But you know who you are. And he hits me up like super periodically, but not periodically. If he knows he's got an inside scoop, he hits me up, right? 4-0 on these, best of which was a minus 135 favorite. Dude knocked the other dude out in 6 seconds. It was minus 135, right? He messages me up with Chandler Cole, and he says 100% guarantee, money in the bank. Chandler Cole will not win this fight. Can wrestle, shows up in bad shape, 1-round guy, fought in really low-level competition. This is as easy money. Load up on Ante. I'm feeling it as well. I was already giving him a pass because of the Bruno fight, because Bruno's a bomber. Chandler Cole's effectively coming in on short notice for Hatif Moel, who would have lost anyways, but all the same, big German heavyweight. All the same, it's like, okay, I feel good about this. My guy's my guy. You know, he hasn't led me astray. He only hits me up when he's got surefire locks. Like, barely, never, ever hits me up, unless it's a surefire lock. He's a good guy. And man, Chandler Cole made Ante look pedestrian for all about like 3.5 minutes, and then he 100% got tired. As soon as he got tired, he more or less gave up that last takedown and then got beaten on by Ante. But Ante isn't the guy we thought he was. His striking's not all that good. His wrestling's not all that good. I don't think his cardio is all that. Cardio's okay for a bigger guy, I suppose, right? So there's just not a whole lot to love. He came in as like a giant favorite. He's almost 6-1 over Bruno. He loses. He comes into Chandler Cole as a minus 400 favorite, even though Cole's no good. He's less of a favorite because now there's not a whole lot of faith in there. As far as his skill goes, he's well-rounded, but there's not any one area that he does particularly well. And coming into this fight against Golstov, I just struggle to find his best path would be take Golstov down and control him. But I just don't know that that's a viable game plan for 15 minutes. I could see Golstov keeping him standing, you know, having the better footwork, being the faster guy, more mobile guy, longer reach, stay to the outside, better striker, and eventually clipping Ante. And again, it's not that I thought Ante was chinny, but you go back to the Bruno fight, it's like just clipped right off the bat. You excuse him. The Chandler Cole fight doesn't look good. And again, this is him coming back after a near 2-year-long layoff. What happens a lot of the times you fight European talent and you look awesome, right? And it's a lot of these middling, same, like I was saying, oh, he'd be UFC veteran Ollie Thompson. Well, it sounds cool in Europe because if UFC veteran and former strongman competitor, Ollie Thompson. But in actuality, he's a low-level competitor. They're low-level wins. And so because you can rack up a bunch of low-level wins on the regional scene, you know, you have a big reputation when you hit down in North America, and it's just like, you know, you're average at best. And Ante kind of does look average at best to me. Golstov, again, the key would be to control him. I just don't think he's going to successfully take him down time and time again. And since coming into this tournament, he himself looked like shit against Brandon Sales his last time out. Lost the first round, at least lost the first 4 minutes of the first round. But you saw as soon as Sales got tired, Golstov did it. Golstov kept coming, and the ground game looked much improved. And the striking, because he's such a long guy and is a pinpoint accurate striker, eventually start to find his rhythm, eventually start to get comfortable, eventually start to pick his shots and find a lot more success, and then puts him away late in the third. Or I was kind of early in the third round. Almost put him away in the second. Beat the shit out of him. But came in the third, did what he had to do. This guy's ultra experienced, 27-6 pro record, can go 15 minutes, can finish you, can submit you, can strike. So when I'm looking for X factors and guys, he's actually got a bunch of them. Whereas Ante just does everything kind of average. So how would Ante win this fight in theory? Get the takedowns, establish top control. I'm just hoping that Golstov snuffs them out, keeps it standing, wins with the striking. It's minus 235 Dennis Golstov, comeback on Ante, plus 190 range. So yeah, I agree with the assessment. I agree with the price. And I will be going with Dennis Golstov. Not saying I'm like super comfortable with it. And I hate to go against my Croatian guy like that. But the thing with this tournament, as opposed to a UFC fight, right? We'll break down the UFC fight tomorrow with Paul Shag. Shout out to my boy on Wednesday, depending on, you know, whenever you watch this show. But when you're breaking down these UFC fights, it's like they've had 6 months in between. They've had 8 months in between. Some of them are, you know, haven't fought in a year. So now you can speculate on like potential improvements. This is what he looked like this time. But 2 fights back, this is what, like, this tournament, the guy just fought. He just fought like 6-7 weeks ago. Nothing's changed. If anything, he's just a more banged up version of himself. Ante looked like shit in his first fight. He looked like shit in his second fight. If he does win this fight, it's just going to be smothering him from top control. But, you know, I have a feeling he's going to more often than not look like shit. Golstov gets the win. Moving on, we got this considered the prelims now. Renan Ferreira versus Stuart Austin. The official price is Stuart. Renan Ferreira is again, depending on your book, we'll just average him out at 3-1, right? It looks like you can get him for minus 290. It looks like you can get him for minus 350. But again, he's about in that 3-1 range. Come back on Stuart Austin, but plus 220. Stuart Austin, of course, taking the fight on short notice. Renan Ferreira, like, he looks like he's got the skills, but again, he's just not trustworthy. It's hard to get trustworthy heavyweights in general, just because they're big bodies, right? They're some of the biggest guys in the world. There's very few of them. They're fighting fellow big bodies, and the punches just mean so much more. The athleticism, even though they're great athletes, they're not fast like bantamweights. You know, they're there to be hit. They take damage. They tire out a lot faster. There's so much more unpredictability, and that's why people love the heavyweights, right? Why is it hard to market flyweight but easy to market heavyweight? People like those sloppy slobber knockers, right? They like the guys get knocked out. They like this guy's dominating and then gasses himself out after 5 minutes, and the other guy makes a comeback. And heavyweight kind of embodies that to a certain degree. With Renan Ferreira, he was a big boy, 6'8", you know, comes in, mimics, he spent a lot of guys time in UFC camps mimicking the taller opponent, right? Mimicking that bigger guy. Has some decent credentials of his own, but just doesn't fight all that frequently. And then he gets Jared Vander a fight in LFA, wins, second round triangle choke, looks like he had a decent ground game. Again, big enough body. Vander went on to fight in Contender Series, then make it to the UFC, so decent enough win. And then he takes 2 years off again. So where's he at? I don't know. Been training. He's a Team Nogueira guy. Looks like he's in good shape, but does he have cardio? Couldn't tell you. You know, his ground game, yeah, okay. He's got long legs. He can throw up a triangle, but he's drawing Fabricio Verdum in the first round. He's got no shot. He's got no shot. And again, to that effect, he comes in as only a plus 200 underdog. So Fabricio Verdum, obviously people didn't have a whole lot of faith in him. But Ferreira showed off some decent it ends up being a no contest, right? He gets a TKO win at first, and they review it, and they said that he initially tapped on a triangle choke. Kind of does look like he tapped, but it was a Brazilian tap, and these guys are both Brazilian, so they know how the game works, man. You don't stop squeezing until the ref lets go. Beyond that, he did tap. However, when he does tap, Fabricio just locks this son of a bitch even tighter and starts to squeeze. Dirty Brazilian move, sure. But it wasn't as if he laid up on him. You know, the dude tapped. He got squeezing even harder. The dude's got nowhere to go now. And I thought Fabricio either gassed his legs out or this guy figured out a way to get out. He's just started ground and pounding him, softening him up big time, got out of the choke, and now Fabricio's tired, and this big old 6'8" boy's on top of him, writing down some heavy ground and pound, knocks him out, gets the win. They overturn it, sure, but that's a feather in your cap. This guy's a former UFC champion. This guy beat Fedor Emelianenko back when he was still pretty much Fedor Emelianenko. That's a very solid victory. Even if they rule it a no contest, like you know what's up. You know what happened that night. This was the jungle. Fabricio kept squeezing, right? So what would happen was the guy would have tapped and been like, oh shit, no one's going to save me. And then would have got to punching, which is what he ended up doing, and got out and won. Good win as far as I'm concerned. It's the follow-up win over Karl Seumanutafa that I take issue with. So you just pulled off a big upset. You knocked him out. He pulls out of the second round of the tournament because he's probably still concussed from the beating that you gave him. And you come in as a minus 455 favorite over Karl Seumanutafa, who's 12-12. Again, is on short notice and is not expected to do anything. And whereas he looked good in the first round, his cardio is not good. Once he tires out, it's a problem. Now, in the case of fighting Karl Seumanutafa, Karl's tired too. He's super vulnerable at giving up takedowns. He just didn't really fight with any real sense of urgency. But you saw Ferreira's game fall apart, his durability fall apart, his gas tank fall apart. And that's probably because when was the last time he even fought a 3-round decision? Yeah, long time. Don't think he ever has, actually. So was he able to shore up his cardio in a 7-week, 8-week span? No. He's still going to have suspect cardio. He could be a quick finisher, and that's what he's going to need to do to Stuart Austin, who's susceptible to getting finished quickly. But if he doesn't finish him for whatever reason, this one is going to get greasy. Stuart Austin, he's not terrible. He's 33 years old. He himself is a grappler as well. So if he can use some of that grappling to neutralize an early rush from Renan Ferreira, then he could, in theory, again, it's all in theory because we don't know what's going to happen until Thursday night, but I can see him working his way back into it. Whereas Karl Seumanutafa's got no ground game and bad cardio, Stuart Austin's got an okay ground game, decent ground game, and much better cardio. He's not the biggest heavyweight. He's more of a mobile guy. I can see Ferreira having early success against him. But again, the longer this thing goes, I could see it pulling into Stuart Austin's favor. When you look at his record, because again, I've seen just very briefly online, I don't know where the fuck I saw it. Anyway, someone was mentioning, they were like, Stuart Austin is just so chinny, Ferreira was probably just going to brush right through him. Possible, but with the assessment of he's chinny, he's been knocked out by Evgeny Harokin, who is a power puncher in Russia. He fought him in Russia, and that's not a good place to be fighting Harokin. You want to get him outside of there. If anything, that was 2 years ago, right? The loss prior to that, knocked out again in the first round. That's a shame, but it's against Johnny Walker, a star in the UFC's light heavyweight division, a guy with big dynamic finishing ability. Is he the most solid fighter going? No. But, finishing ability at the wazoo. So, yeah, again, okay, Johnny Walker knocked him out. Evgeny Harokin knocked him out. Well, what else you got for me? Dalcha Lukumbula, again, he's in the UFC. He's an absolute tank of a man, built to the tits, and he fought him in Africa, in the guy's own backyard. Again, Mark Godbeard. Mark Godbeard is a UFC heavyweight, was a solid enough regional talent in England. Caught Stuart Austin early in his career. So I honestly give him a pass on level of competition. He's fought some decent guys. Those guys are able to take him out. But to just suggest that he's chinny, I don't know. Has he lost to shitty guys inside the business? No. And even to some of these losses, well, Dalcha's a middleweight now. Okay, well, it's 4 years ago. Mark Godbeard, well, he was kind of a washout. Well, it's 5 years ago. I think he is getting better to a certain extent. PFLs usually didn't really happen last week. Unless the Ray Cooper fight wasn't a huge upset. It was like we got Cooper at plus 150 when we did the show. But in terms of regular PFL shows, there's always one of these 3 to 4 to 1 favorites that's shit in the apple pie. Almost always. When I look at Ferreira, I just think, what's the official? Yeah. I just think at 3 to 1, heavyweights be heavyweights. I can't say that I'm going to pull the trigger. I don't think I'm ballsy enough. I don't think I'm ballsy enough to pull the trigger on Stuart. What I am saying, though, is I think that Ferreira at 3 to 1 is getting a lot of respect this week. A lot of people do like him. I could see him being a lot of people's darlings near the upper end of that parlay. And if you were to parlay multiple organizations together this week and put your Bellator and your PFL and your UFC all together, I could see Ferreira cracking some of those lists. Stuart Austin is coming in on short notice. He's got a perception of being chinny. He's not expected to do much. But just because one guy's bad, don't allow it to think that the other guy's just really good. Ferreira is who he is. I did think he looked against Fabricio, but it's a shot mid-40s version of Fabricio who's just not the same guy he used to be. And then I thought his true colors came out in the Carl Seumanutafa fight. So I probably will be stupid enough to end up taking him, but he will be lower on those parlays than probably most people would expect. Caitlin Young versus Marina Mokhnatkina. I thought it was pronounced different than that. Well, obviously it's pronounced different than that. I butchered that one, but I don't know. Anyways, Marina versus Caitlin Young. Caitlin Young, obviously OG of the sport. The current line is Marina at -170, Caitlin Young at +148. This is like, I almost want to just suggest a dog or pass situation, which would end us up with Caitlin Young, but this is, it's going to be sloppy. It's going to be big time sloppy. With Caitlin Young, I mean, she shouldn't need an introduction, but she's a pioneer of women's MMA. I mean, I guess she's still only 35 years old, but she's basically been fighting as long as they were said, you can do this. 2007 debut, she knocked out Miesha Tate with a head kick in a one-night tournament in her debut against for a legendary tournament for hook and shoot back in the day. That was also like featured on a Strikeforce Challenger series, right? Her losses, Gina Carano, huge star at the time. She rematches Julie Kedzie twice, wins one, lost one. Jennifer Tate, Anna Barone, Leslie Smith. Anna Barone was a bum. I don't know why I mentioned her. Leslie Smith gone on to UFC success and Bellator success. Liz Carmouche challenged for a UFC title, challenged for a Bellator title. Leslie Smith again. Lauren Murphy getting ready for a title run. Raquel Canuto. Oh, she got a bad looking record, but she is a powerhouse Hawaiian. Good grappler as well. Goes to Ryzen as a huge underdog against Rina Miura. Wins, you know. Pam Sorensen, you just saw make her Bellator debut. Cindy Dandois, crap, fought at a high level. She's got that OG experience, but just she's so slow and unathletic. And even though she's got all this experience, it's just like her reflexes aren't quite there anymore. I mean, she's not a good counterpuncher because she routinely gets beat to the punch. And as far as allowing her to be the aggressor, she's just like too smart and tactical for that now. So she typically doesn't get off first. She loses the battle to the punch, gets tagged up, presses, you know, has a good ground game still. The wrestling's not quite there. If she was to end up in top control, that would be her best spot, but just struggles to get it there. Her versus Mariana Morais, we'll talk about in a bit, but you know, she had all the same advantages in that spot. She's probably just going to grind on her. She's going to have the cardio advantage. She has the experience advantage. And Morais tends to be on the losing end of these close decisions more often than not. She's fought an elite level of competition, and Caitlin Young doesn't represent that elite level anymore. You know, Caitlin Young ain't so young anymore. But still, right? She's still got that veteran savvy ship. She's fought a higher level of competition. She'll probably squeeze this one out. I'd be super disappointed with what I saw. Sherdog gave her the fight. One judge gave her the fight. But in actuality, I mean, she just did not do enough. In the third round, she got battered up. Should have been 1-1 going into the third. And again, I mean, she actually stole the first round with a head kick late. Second round, she got beat to the punch routinely. And in the third round, she got battered around. Head split. Shot for a late takedown, you know, that really sealed the deal for Morais because she stuffed it, ended up on top, and battered her some more. The fight metric numbers for PFL, they're not significant strikes, but they just count like that's a three-punch combination in PFL. They did clock Morais at 200 strikes landed in that fight against Caitlin Young. So she did batter her around. She was the rightful winner, and it just seemed like Caitlin Young was slowing down. Marina, meanwhile, looked like she was going to be the shit a few years back, man. Combat Sambo champion. Her husband's a multiple-time Combat Sambo world champion. This is a Combat Sambo family. Gold medals out the ace. She turns pro, and it's just like, who's going to step up to the plate here? And she looks like $1 million, but it's spotty Russian matchmaking. She wins her debut in 25 seconds with an armbar. She wins her second fight out, Achilles lock first round. She wins her third fight out, first round armbar. She wins her fourth fight out against Karina Silva. This is a first round knee bar, 58 seconds. Total package. Sambo background, chick, tough. Husband does it. All they do is train. She's competed at some of the biggest Sambo tournaments in the world and won. What's there not to like? Then she gets Lilian Joshua. Now, Joshua would become more famous later on because she went to the UFC and is no good. But at the time, she was, again, still a very rudimentary 6-2 fighter out of Georgia. Come over here. It was a title fight for Fight Nights Global. Marina, do they have the line listed? They don't. Anyway, she was like a 10-1 favorite, right? She's going to roll up this girl, no problem. And I don't know what it was. It turns out that she's like massively suspect. She has very little striking. Her wrestling, not all that good. Her submission game, not all that good. Her cardio, not all that good. Did not seem like a fighter. It was one of the biggest letdown performances. I was just like, oh man, that was not as billed as advertised. But you know what? Bellator says maybe it was just a bad performance. They come calling her next time out, give her Janae Harding, who Janae Harding's a kickboxer. Janae Harding's fairly one-dimensional, comes from a kickboxing background. You know what you're going to get every time out. And again, just looked awful. And I mean awful. Getting out grappled in some spots by the kickboxer. Got tired, got beat up. Bad loss. Bad decision loss. So anyways, Bellator still owes her one fight. They give it her against Amanda Bell. Now at this point, everyone's pretty much off. She's even money against Amanda, the Lady Killer Bell, who comes in 7-7. That's how much people are off. She does win the fight. It wasn't the prettiest thing going. She legitimately did win, though. I mean, she hustled Bell up. She tired her out. She did get some takedowns. She looked overall a lot more improved, but she's 33 years old. So in one case, you can make the argument she's getting more comfortable in MMA. It's when she's losing, it's not like she's getting finished quickly. She's still losing by way of 15-minute decisions. In fact, that Joshua fight was a 25-minute fight, right? So she went 5 rounds and lost against Joshua, and then went 15 against Janae Harding and lost as well. But at least she's accruing some in-ring experience, and I would hope getting better. But from what you see right now, it's not very good. So I guess I'm thinking with the issue with Caitlin Young is that she probably does have the striking advantage, but she's giving up a wrestling advantage and a speed advantage. Definitely, it's 35 versus 33, but the youthfulness definitely goes towards Mokhnatkina, who's had a wealth of combat Sambo experience. So it's not like she doesn't know what she's doing. It's just like that is a lot different than what Caitlin Young was doing and getting grinded on in these old school hook and shoot tournaments back in the day, right? Like, I would say Marina should have the speed. She should have a little bit better physicality. She should be able to have some success clinched up. I don't even know. I think clinch battle actually might go towards Young, like the dirty boxing, the knees from the clinch. I just don't think that either girl's got the work rate. This is a shit fight. This is a shit sloppy fight. I haven't really made up my mind yet. I feel like Marina is the rightful favorite just because we're writing Caitlin Young off as being no good. She's 12-11 for a good reason. The later years of her career haven't exactly been the most memorable. We give her the respect that she's, owed, but do you really want to bet money on her? Like, probably not. But the flip side to that is just because you got one girl you're looking to fade, you think is no good, that doesn't all of a sudden make Marina any good. Like, again, that Bell fight, Bell had spots she could have won. She's just no good, right? So, shout out to my girl, the Lady Killer, Amanda Bell. I'm sorry to call you no good. Moving on, we've got Carl Seumanutafa versus DeReese. This one seems like it's everyone's dog play of the week, but Carl Seumanutafa plus 120 versus DeReese minus 145. Again, it seems like money's coming in on Carl Seumanutafa. This one purely comes down to durability. Durability versus durability. If DeReese, who seemingly is not a very durable guy, is not going to go beyond one round, this is Carl Seumanutafa's fight all day long. But Carl's, again, this goes back to the same thing we've already mentioned on 2 or 3 of these fights now. DeReese is not good. We've established that. At least certainly he's not elite level. He has pulled off a couple of victories here and there, mostly by way of catching the guy in the first round. But beyond that, if he doesn't catch you in the first round, he does tend to fold up like a cheap tent and get finished in the first round. Officially, he has not left the first round. 2016? Yeah, he hasn't gone outside of the first round in a fight since 2015. So it's effectively been, and in fact, it's August 15th of 2015. So it's been 6 years since he's been outside of the first round. He's not exactly the kind of guy you want to be putting your money on. It looked like he had a decent run going early with PFL. They signed him. He beat Leroy Johnson first round knockout. He defeats Mike Kyle from UFC and Strikeforce fame, over the hill, but had a name. Knocked him out in the first round. He knocked out this Valdrin Estrefi. Bad fight, but he got kicked in the balls, and then on the resume, knocked him out. And then he actually comes into a fight with Jared Rochal as a minus 280 favorite. Mind you, if he beats Rochal, he goes on to fight for $1 million. So he's in the tournament. He won the first round. He's a 280 favorite over Jared Rochal. And the first 3.5 minutes, he kicks the shit out of Jared Rochal. Beats him up pretty good, but fails to put him away, and then gasses out. Jared Rochal stands back up, takes him down, and pounds him out, all in the vicinity of that first round. So his cardio doesn't look good. He looks super gun shy. He'd follow up his next fight against Dennis Golstov, getting knocked out in the first round. Follow that up against Bruno Cappelozza, getting knocked out in the first round. What you notice about both of those fights, as opposed to the Rochal fight, any of the other fights, is like he knows he's matched up with a power puncher, and he looks deathly afraid. He doesn't want to engage. He stands on the outside. It looks like he's got a grin. At first, I'd think, why is this guy smiling? Like, he gets hit with the 2-3 punch combination, and he smiles. He doesn't get a bad chin, He gets overwhelmed because his defense is just so spotty. And he just like, why is he smiling? But he's not smiling. It's like a grin. Like he gets hit and he grins. It's an awful poker face. His opponents just smell the blood in the water. And in both cases, they swarm him. Again, it's not like he's chinny like, oh, he got hit, he's out cold. Like he just ends up taking a barrage of shots, and eventually the ref has mercy for him. That last one with Cappelozza, actually it's a soccer kick in the face, which is like borderline illegal, but it was legal. And then the ref is just like, yeah, I'm tired of watching this, steps in for him. He's big underdog in both spots. He hasn't really got a fair shake. PFL probably feels bad for him. And they're telling him, you know what, Mo? We're going to give you a favor here, and we're going to give you a winnable fight and Carl Seumanutafa. The thing that they forgot to mention to DeReese is that 20 minutes prior to the phone call, they were on the phone with Carl Seumanutafa telling him the same shit. Carl, thanks for taking all them tough fights, brother. We're going to give you a winnable fight against DeReese. It's a winnable fight finally. And so both guys have been presented with the opportunity to not fight a killer and to potentially get back in the win column. I'll admit, DeReese hasn't exactly been fighting easy guys. Cappelozza is a bomber. Golstov's one of the tournament favorites. It's a tough run. Even before that, Jared Rochelle. Jared Rochelle was 6-2 in the UFC before they released him. Not a bad competitor. You know, a standout collegiate wrestler, D1, All-American, national champion. You know, that's a high level. Flip side of that with Carl Seumanutafa, it's the same shit. You know, Renan Ferreira, okay, will still beat Fabricio Verdum and one of the tournament favorites, so let's not discredit him. Dustin Johnson, he was an undefeated Canadian, fought on Contender Series. We're supposed to fight on Contender Series. Pretty solid enough guy. By Canadian standards, he's like the number 2 or 3 heavyweight in Canada, so that's decent enough. Ali Asaiv, yeah, beast, right? Solid enough guy. Ante was supposed to be a tournament favorite. So again, you can give these guys passes on like their fighting good level. It's that they look awful against that good level. The difference between the two is whereas DeReese hasn't been inside of the first round in 5 years and seems to have suspect cardio. Carl, also suspect cardio, but he could take a beating for 15 minutes. You know, this guy's pretty cast iron. That recent run of losses that I mentioned, all of them by decision. The loss prior to that versus Sheldon Graves, because he's 1-5 in his last 6 fights. And it's an abysmal run. All 5 of those losses by decision. All unanimous. He pretty much loses every round. But, I mean, he's durable enough, and that's his key. He needs to Homer Simpson it. He needs to go in there against DeReese, probably loses the first round, certainly loses the first 3 or 4 minutes of the first round, and then when Mo starts to get tired, Carl comes back alive, stuffs one of those takedowns, knocks him out. DeReese, even though he's got like a strike, it looks like he's a striker. He's knocking guys out in the first round. He's got some fairly decent, raw, natural power in his hands. So if he does land, he could do some damage. And a lot of his fights are ending standing up, but he's straight up a wrestler. He's actually a state champion out of Florida. Went 27-0 his senior year. Dude knows how to wrestle. In fact, he's a high school wrestling coach currently right now. And I'm sure he's tired of getting knocked out. So what do you think he's going to do? He's going to go out there and he's going to shoot those takedowns. It just so happens that Carl Seumanutafa's takedown defense is non-existent. So DeReese will take him down. DeReese will probably have some decent success in that first round. But if Mo starts to tire, and he's probably going to start to tire. He's 6 foot 250. Like he's a big enough guy. He's going to start to tire. Yet once he starts to tire, it's probably not going to go all that well for him. So at that point, that's when Carl works his way back into it. Would I feel confident on either side of this one? No. But this probably is your quintessential heavyweight dog or pass. And if you're going to get plus money on Carl Seumanutafa, great. If PFL was the UFC, I would be like, live bet the shit out of this one, right? Let Mo go out there, win that first round, and then Carl's definitely still alive in the second and third. What's worrisome for me personally is the fact that he basically loses all of the rounds and all of these losses. Once he gets taken down, it's pretty easy to take him down. Once he gets taken down, he doesn't really offer up anything from his back. Yeah, he survives. Yeah, he takes the damage, but he's not offering up anything. And so if Mo could wrestle for 15 minutes, it'd be an easy DeReese win. The fact that he hasn't been outside of the first round in 5 years would seriously suggest he's incapable of wrestling for 15 minutes. Last thing I want to mention with Carl Seumanutafa is that he got a loss to Matt Mitrione where he got knocked out in the first round. This is 5 years ago now. Great moment, though. He basically knocks out Matt Mitrione out in the first round. Drops him. Solid. Falls him to the ground. Decent ground and pound. Mitrione recovers. He knocks out Carl, which ain't no easy task, my friend. But he puts Carl away. Carl drops. They post-fight interview Matt Mitrione. And he's like, oh yeah, good fight. Went exactly how I expected. And they're like, well, talk about getting, you getting knocked down there in the first, and he's like, I got knocked down. And they're like, Yeah, dude, you got knocked out. Fabian Jones like, oh, I remember that. It's like, yeah, dude, Carl can't be overlooked. Like, he's a big heavyweight, big Samoan looking guy. Like, he touches those lips with that hand. He could do a lot of damage, and it just seems like DeReese is Max Mo. What's his name? Mo Muscle? Yeah. Mo DeReese. He doesn't look like he likes getting hit. So I guess the plan would be for Carlos to try to get at him early, tire him out, make him desperate in the land. But the path, I hate betting against a guy that's got a clear avenue to victory with a wrestling advantage. However, what are we going to do? Take all favorites on a PFL card? Even last week, we didn't do that. We bet the favorites because they're favorites for a reason, right? We try to figure out which favorites got the biggest chance of fucking us. But we're going to play a decent amount of favorites. Last week, we nailed our 2 underdogs. I would like to key in on about 2, maybe 3 underdogs in this card as well, right? That seems like it'll be. Does Carl Seumanutafa make sense as one of them? Yeah, it definitely does make sense as one of them. But that's dog chasing, right? Do you need him on parlays? No, definitely not on parlays. Does it make sense as like a straight up bet or like a prop type bet? Yeah. In that regard, it does make sense. Claudio Zamora versus Mariana Morais. I drew some notes up because the card definitely falls apart real quick, and I just wanted to make sure I was giving you all the most accurate information as it could. So I guess we'll start off with Mariana Morais just because you should know her by now, or at least most people, PFL fans, would know her by now. She's coming in as a -1. Nope. That was original opponent. Should be bigger than that. I think she's like 225. Okay. Again, it just depends what your book is. Like, she could be had apparently at -275, but more realistically, you're going to get her between 350 and -400. Come back on Claudio Zamora. Could be +220. Could be +260. Depends what your book is. Okay, so again, we'll start from Morais. Everybody knows who she is. So this is key, man. She turns pro 6 days after her it was 2 weeks. 2 weeks after her 17th birthday, Morais turns pro in Brazil. So she literally just turned 17 and she's fighting as a professional. And she just accrued a bunch of fights. Now, did she fight always the smartest fights? No. She just fought anybody she could, and that results in 11 pro losses. But the 11 pro losses, it's almost like creme de la creme. Jennifer Maia is an Invicta champion, a former UFC title challenger, fights in the UFC now. Roxanne Modafferi is former UFC title challenger, if you could believe that. Cappelozza fights in the UFC. Ariane Lipski, UFC veteran. Vanessa Porto, badass Invicta and Bellator veteran. Laura Procopio, UFC veteran. Norma Dumont, UFC veteran. Vanessa Mello, UFC veteran. Kayla Harrison, the $1 million woman of PFL. So yeah, like, she actually has a ton of experience, and she's still only 26 years old. She's just been at it for a long time. Her nickname's the Razor. I reckon they call her the Razor because these decisions are razor close. She's durable, but she's not exactly the most spectacular. When you think of someone turning pro at 17, only being 26, having fought all these legitimate competitors at this stage in their career, you expect them to be like a super prospect. She's not. She's just like a tough journeyman type woman who journeyman at 26, if you can believe that, but just like gatekeeper, solid gatekeeper. All the girls that have defeated her have then gone on to fight in the UFC. The girls that aren't defeating her, well, they're just not all that good. Her last time against Caitlin Young, again, I think she was a slight underdog in that spot. But if you can get her at dog money, always a good play because she's in close fights. She's going to give you a full effort. She's got 28 professional fights, so she's got a lot of experience, even though she's only 26. She's got something that she can bank on. And against Caitlin Young, she just wanted it more. She hustled her up. In that third round, it was for all the marbles, really, and she persevered. She pulled through. She landed the big shot. She busted her up. She stuffed the takedown. She got on top. That's all good stuff from her. So she is still making improvements. But it's just like, I think she's limited. Now, she is trained by Jessica Andrade, one of her top training partners, so that's not going to hurt. And she is going to come into this fight, with she got a 4-inch height advantage. They both got the same reach. And again, the only other thing that I can mention is that she was accredited with 200 strikes landed in that last fight with Caitlin Young. So slow starter, yes, she is a slow starter, but cardio doesn't seem to be a huge issue. And it seems like once she gets that slow start out of the way, she's just going to keep coming at you. Flip side to that, we got Claudia Zamora. She's stepping on pretty short notice. They're almost like polar opposites of each other in that you've got one girl in Morais that makes her pro debut slightly after her 17th birthday. Then you've got Zamora, made her amateur debut at age 32. She's currently 35 years old, and it's just a slow start to the game. She actually went 5-0 as an amateur, but again, she was already 32 years old, and it was just lower level competition. She drops her pro debut and over in Kombache Americas, and then has since gone 3-0, but super low level competition, 0-0, 0-0, and 1-0. So, and you can watch both of those last two fights, Icon. You can watch them on Fight Pass. And it's not that the skill it doesn't look decent. It's just when you're fighting a girl that's 0-0 and you beat her in the first or second round and more or less face zero adversity, what can I take away from that? Athletically, she looks decent. Facially, she looks 35 years old. I'm not saying she doesn't have a decent base. I'm not saying she's not working her ass off, but she's out of Florida, and yet she's not training at American Top Team. She's not training at Sanford. She's not training at MMA Masters. She's not training at Goat Shed. She's, just kind of doing her own thing, making improvements, no doubt. This is not a knock on her trainers whatsoever. It's just at 35, this is probably going to be a more refined version of what we're going to see out of her, and we haven't seen a whole lot. Now, she's stepping in this fight on 2 weeks, 2 months. It's short notice, but she fought 2 months ago. So I don't think she's going to be in bad shape. At 35, I think it was probably like stay ready so that you don't got to get ready, and that's what she should do in this spot. Here are the main concerns about her. She is 5 feet tall. Yeah, okay. So she loses her pro debut, wins 3 straight, yada, yada, yada. Her whole career has been at 135 pounds. She's 5 feet tall, does have a 66-inch reach. That's a very solid reach for someone who's 5 feet tall. In fact, it's the same as Morais. They both have 66-inch reaches. Only Morais is 4 inches taller than her. Sure, whatever. But she's a career 35er. Whole career, amateur, pro, 35. Last time out, her opponent has some trouble. They agree to a 45 catch weight. She moves up to 45. This fight's at 55. So she's going to be 5 feet tall, fighting at 155 pounds. You would expect her to probably be, significantly outsized here. Just I don't think she's going to have the ability to go out there and get these early takedowns like she does in her regional show fights against 0-0 competitors and then get the easy rear naked choke. As far as the striking goes, the striking, it looks good, but I haven't seen her get punched back in the face. I haven't seen her getting swarmed back. And the problem with Morais is you can hit her with a head kick. I've seen Caitlin Young do it. You can land solid combinations. You can work her over. And as soon as you're done, she's just like, okay, my turn. And she comes back and she delivers one back. I know she can take it. I couldn't tell you if Zamora could or not. So those unknowns are all problematic. I do see her probably having a speed advantage. And I think that speed advantage will probably lead to this being a competitive fight early. But once you get tired and once you start to get a little more desperate and once you start getting a little more lost in there, that speed advantage is the first thing to go. Then you're a little more flat-footed, and then Morais has a way of working her way back into it. So do I want to bet on 17-11 Mariana Morais? Not particularly. Do I think this thing probably goes 15 minutes? Yeah, I could see it going 15. But again, I don't know that Zamora is durable. I don't know that she's going to be able to persevere through some bad spots if she needs to. So, there's just not enough that you can really take away from her. And again, she is technically on short notice, albeit probably not in bad shape because she just fought. So, take it with a grain of salt. But it does seem like Morais is the rightful favorite in this, on this ticket. And yeah, I mean, I think at minus 250 or less than 3-1, not the worst play going. Considering this is a lot of big chalky favorites who are not, the most trustworthy, I think is how we're going to have to really play this one. Miranda Barber versus Amanda Leve. I don't know if this one's too good to be true or what the case is, but Barber's coming in on short notice. She's replacing Cynthia Vasquez. This was originally a minus 135 spot for Amanda Leve. It's now a minus 225 to minus 260 spot for Amanda Leve. And totally agree with that. And it's probably going to go a lot higher than that. But Miranda Barber, she's known as She-Hulk. She's out of American Top Team. Ryan Quinn's her head coach. And he does a really good job with a lot of the female fighters out of the gym. She's solid. She looks very strong. She's very short as well. I believe she is. No, she's 5 foot. Yeah, okay. She's 5'7", which doesn't seem obviously not short for a female. But for a 155-pound female, she's not like she's on the biggest end of it. She is pretty jacked up, and she moonlights as a professional boxer. As far as her professional boxing career goes, it hasn't been all that good. She's 1-2. As far as her MMA career goes, yeah, it's much of the same. As an amateur, she went 4-3, right? It wasn't exactly the most spectacular record going. As a pro, she wins her debut and then loses to Laura Sanchez. Laura Sanchez also in the PFL tournament. And Laura Sanchez is 6 feet tall. She was the tallest woman in the tournament. But when you watch that fight, it's like, oh man, Barber does not look like she's in it at all. She's giving up a massive amount of size, reach, everything. And early in the first round, just not having her way, the body shots just crumple her up. gets TKO'd in the first, like not a good look at all, and then actually loses that fight and then makes her pro boxing debut. So to me, it's like she didn't like the knees to the body. She didn't like the clench. She didn't like this big, tall opponent. Her amateur career, she's 4-3. Her pro career, now she's 1-1. Things aren't exactly going the way she thought, so she makes that pro boxing switch. Loses her pro boxing debut, wins a decision, drops a majority decision. That makes her 1-2, and now runs into this spot short notice against Amanda Leve. She has fought at 145 pounds. She boxed at 160 pounds. This one's going to settle in at 155. So it's not like she's going to be terribly undersized. She is pretty jacked up. She's in good shape. I just think that she's like super robotic in there. She pushes a lot of her punches. She muscles a lot of her techniques. She didn't look particularly good off her back. And I think that latter statement, the not being good off your back, will probably be her downfall. So Amanda Leve, again, if you were just to Tapology cap it, there's nothing to know. She has no nickname. She has no birthday. Says that she fights at lightweight. You don't know where she's from. You see Dante Rivera, BJJ. But that last part of that statement, Dante Rivera, BJJ, it's like that's where the story begins with this girl. I mean, she's an absolute tyrant in the grappling world. And she does have a 2-0 amateur record. So essentially, she had her first amateur fight in 2017, wins by first round submission, and then does a little bit of grappling, is awarded her blue belt, starts competing in these IBJJF tournaments, which is a world title, and wins it at blue belt, right? Gets her purple belt, took one more amateur fight, won a decision, fair, and then just devotes herself strictly to BJJ after that. Wins world championships at purple belt, wins world championships at brown belt, gets awarded her black belt. She's got 2 instructors that they co-promoted together. Like she's a double, I don't know. She's not like a second degree or nothing like that. She's basically just got like two separate BJJ black belts, gave her 1 belt. So her lineage is like crossed off to 2 directions. She's a BJJ black belt now. And so she's been competing a lot in BJJ. She qualified for the ADCC tournament, winning the regional qualifiers. And this is a no-gi tournament. So we know that she can do gi grappling because that's what her IBJJF days were. And getting promoted, you got to wear the gi. And now that she's a black belt, you're seeing her no-gi game as well. Very, very, very solid. Very solid no-gi game. Is she world-class elite level? No. But she's still very, very good in the grappling department. Reading up on some of the stuff with her, I like pretty much everything, right? She actually is 24 years old. She is out of Dante Rivera's BJJ in Pennsylvania, but she also moonlights a little bit in spots in Jersey and, basically does get high-level training. She started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at 11 years old. She played like softball. I guess she was like into softball, and her dad's ultra competitive, right? So this one story I read, he'd always be like, second place is for losers, basically. Like, you got to win. You got to win. It's all about winning. So she'd be like, okay, that's her mentality. Small kid, got to win. So her softball team gets second. She ends up winning 2, not a state title, but it was like a regional title. So she's doing decent in baseball. She finished second in this tournament. And the old man makes her, the whole team's like, oh, well, we got second place. The old man makes her take the trophy and smash it into pieces in front of her own team to be like, this is loser shit. It's winner or nothing. Dad's basically Ricky Bobby. So she starts doing jiu-jitsu at 11 because her brother gets put into it. She just follows him one day and is like, cool, I want to do this. Doesn't like it at first, but just like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, once you learn how to do a few things, gets addictive. And she's just like fully immersed herself since then. She's grappled professionally, not professionally, but all of her grappling matches are also at 160 pounds. So she's not going to be terribly undersized, cutting an extra 5 pounds to come here down to 155. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the gist of it. What we have seen before, though, is people with no real MMA experience to get punched in the face for the first time. They realize this isn't for me. And for a girl making her pro debut and coming from a long lineage of jiu-jitsu, yeah, it's like she could most definitely pull a stunt and be a fraud, not be the real deal. But she's taking on a short notice replacement that's 1 and 2 as a pro boxer and has been focusing mainly on jiu-jitsu. Looking back on the tape on her, it's like, especially that fight with Arroyo, it's like she does get taken down. She doesn't look particularly great off her back. Fighting a limited level of competition, you can get away with it. But again, I just don't think she's that great. Leve has got to go out there and get the takedown. That's going to be the key thing. I don't know if she can strike. I have no idea. I'm going to assume she can't. She's only 24, and she spent a lot of time doing jiu-jitsu. But that being said, she made her MMA debut, amateur, in 2017. So even if she just attended a few striking classes recreationally over that 4-year span, like she's been training. She's a lifelong martial artist. She's ultra competitive. She's got a massive grappling advantage. It's a short notice replacement opponent. I'm making a bunch of assumptions here because we got someone that we don't know can actually fight versus Miranda Barber, who can fight, just isn't all that good. But I have to make the assumption that Amanda Leve is the rightful favorite and is going to win this fight. Christian Lohsen versus Jonas Flok. That is the last fight of the prelims. The line is, I believe Lohsen is the favorite. Is it slight favorite? Lohsen. I should honestly just write. Oh, there he is right here. Okay, so we got Jonas Flok as a minus 120 versus plus 110 comeback on Christian Lohsen. Again, best fight odds just all over the place, man. I should definitely write them out pre-show so I can at least just read them as I go along. But I just assume they're in order here. They're never in order, ever in order. And beyond that, it's like split between two events. Like they're missing half the fight. So joke that is. However, a useful tool if they do get their shit together. Anyways, it's a pretty much a near even money fight. I guess we'll start with Jonas Flok because he's the slight favorite. So he hasn't fought in a year. He's 34 years old. He's had like a decent enough career. I mean, when you consider he's 15-4, that's a pretty good record. He's experienced enough. 34 years old. He's out of Pura Vida in Wisconsin, so he's not out of Rufus Sport. But also, Pura Vida's got a lot of solid guys. Zach Otto fought in the UFC, tends to be one of his top training partners. And, they're high up on this guy. High up, not in the prospect term because he is 34 years old, but high up on like he's already got a fairly refined skill set. So he's a BJJ brown belt. And when you see him in his fights, his striking, he looks uncomfortable. Not that he can't strike, but he looks super uncomfortable. And it's almost like he's got a karate type bounce to him. He's super like bouncy on his feet, in and out. Gets hit at will. Like I'm not sure if he comes from a karate background, but he's got a bounce to him, and then he just uses that, gauges it, gets a hold of you, tries to muscle you to the ground. If he can't muscle you to the ground, he will stand with you. He'll just keep working. He's a gritty type, grinder type fighter. Again, the year off, probably not the worst thing for him. 34, is he starting to get a little bit old? Yes. But is he over the hill? No. Does he have durability issues? Doesn't seem like it. And he pushes a decent enough pace. Pace would be the key for him if he's going to come through as a plus or as a minus 120 favorite. Is he's going to have to put a pace on this kid, because Christian Lohsen, at any point, if he realizes his potential, he could be a big problem for a lot of people. But I just don't know if he's going to realize the potential. He is essentially Chase Hooper. They've got a lot of similarities. He's only 26 years old, similar to Chase Hooper. They're both super young still. And my God, is he one-dimensional with his grappling. Southpaw striker, but just doesn't strike a whole lot. He will strike, similar to Hooper. He'll let his hands go, let his kicks go. But as soon as you engage him, he just folds up. Does not fight off his back foot. Does not counter punch well. He's got a rangy, out of a southpaw stance, he's got a nice little rangy body kick, but he throws it kind of half speed. He doesn't commit to it. And so it's easy to catch. And what happens is these guys eventually get tired of him with his rinky-dink striking. They press forward. And when they press forward, either he tries to clinch up or he gets his back pressed up against the cage. His wrestling could be sick, but he's just not physical enough. So problem with him is that he's 6'2", fighting at 155 pounds. He's got a good size frame, tall guy, but it's lanky man wrestling, and lanky man wrestling's tough. If you've got the angles, if you're a good wrestler and you have that frame, you can make it work. But beyond that, when you go to wrestling class, it's all these short little stout kids. When you go to the tournaments, it's all these short little stout kids. And it's harder for you to figure out how to use the leverage. Once you figure it out, great. But for the most part, it doesn't lend to super high level wrestling for the most part, unless you're an elite level guy. In his case, his takedowns are legit. He loves setting up the low ankle pick. Loves it. He'll sweep the ankle out. He loves going inside trips, outside trips. Basically anything to do with just offsetting your balance. He's probably not strong enough to go blast double. He's not strong enough to grab a hold of a single leg and yank on you. But what he can do is set up these tricky little trip techniques. And I like it. I'm here for it. It's almost like judo base. I would reckon he probably has a bit of a judo background as well. It's good, solid stuff. He was 4-1 as an amateur. All 4 wins by submission. He's 8-2 as a pro. 6 of those wins by submission. He's never been finished. There's some good stuff there, right? So he hits the UFC's radar very briefly. They bring him in on Contender Series. He takes on JJ Okanovich. So at this point, he's solid. He's 7-1. He's coming to win over Wesley Golden, who's not good, but an American top team fighter. But the fight with Wesley Golden, he hits him with a Sulov stretch. Same move that Aljamain Sterling used over Cody Stamann in the UFC a couple years back now. Just nasty technique. Unbelievable stuff, dope. So right away, Contenders is like, all right, we'll have him on. Comes against Okanovich. First round, this kid looks good. This kid looks solid. He goes out there, striking still rinky-dink. JJ backs him up. That was kind of expected. We knew that from the tape study. But shit, man, he got a nice little trip takedown, as he tends to do. And when he gets on top, man, he is a problem. He floats just like effortlessly. He loves to attack the neck. He'll attack the leg. He just puts him in a lot of very good spots. Dominates the first round. Dominates. Did I say the first round? What I meant to say is the first 4 minutes of the round. Maybe even about like 4 minutes and 3 seconds. It almost looks like it's a 10-8 round. That's how much he's just floating on this motherfucker. And then boom, like 57 seconds left in the round, rolls reversed. He looks tired. His game's no good. He blew his legs out on a triangle choke attempt. He just looks super lethargic. And JJ Okanovich puts a beating on him. Probably might have even stolen that first round back. Even if he didn't steal the first round back, going into the second and the third, this kid was just cooked, man. Now his body's not responding. Those trip techniques, now they're not working anymore. Striking, man, it turns out it's just really not all that good. I will give him perseverance. He could have quit. He could have said he wanted out. He could have stumbled. He could have crashed down. He could have stopped defending himself. But he fought the whole way through. His chin looked all right. He's still young. It seems like there's some solid enough upside for him. He's another one of these kids that start training at a very young age. His dad's his head coach. Him and his mom are both listed as owners on a gym in Florida. He does expand out and do some grappling at Fusion XL, and they got a solid BJJ team over there. So, he's not a fish out of water by no stretch, but it's grappling. And so that's the one issue, is that in the Okanovich fight, once he gassed out after the first, he wasn't able to force those spots. Dana obviously doesn't give him a contract, but Dana didn't give JJ Okanovich a contract either because he didn't look all that good. He does rebound with one fight over Dennis Hughes. That's his last time out again. You can watch it on Fight Pass. It's about a year ago. He does go 3 rounds in that fight, which is good to see because his 2 losses are by decision. All of his wins are inside the distance for the most part. He finishes a lot of guys quick. So you want to see him win a decision. That's what we're looking for. He does win a decision over Dennis Hughes, but he got rocked in the first minute. The first round was actually pretty close and competitive. The second and the third round, he was definitely tired, but a little bit of perseverance out of him. He got the takedowns when he needed them. Once he's on top, he's got solid enough grappling, doesn't get a submission, kept working him over. Good, fine. He's still only 26. He's getting better. A year-long layoff probably would have done him some good, and he's got some legitimate good grappling. He could snare up a submission. By the way, I forgot to mention this Dennis Hughes fight. He was in the Sulov stretch again, like in a twister. Holy shit, the twister looked tight. The Sulov stretch looked fairly tight. It just turns out this Dennis Hughes guy had the worst haircut you've ever seen, and as a result, probably was getting bullied. And as a result, was like, I'd rather die than tap out and have these people get the last laugh. So, he toughed it out. He toughed up some gritty spots. But you see the kid, he likes fancy moves, he's not a meat and potato guy, a rear naked choke, a guillotine. What works these days? Arm bars don't really work all that much. They're low percentage. Everything works. Heel hook works. It's just low percentage, right? Triangles, I suppose. Triangles are still pretty decent. Go for those moves. Instead, he likes to go for these fancy niche moves, Peruvian neckties and whatnot. But yeah, it just shows you that the versatility of him. And with that long frame, 6'2", he can make it work for him. It doesn't work in the wrestling department. It could work in the striking department once he figures it out. But what it works best with is the grappling. This long, lanky sumbitch is able to do stuff that most guys just aren't able to. And with Flok's a brown belt. He's probably already seen it before. He trains he's training with some solid guys, UFC veterans. He's going to be in shape for this fight. He probably pushes a pace, stuffs the takedowns, works him up a little bit standing, has his way with them. Like, should, but again, I would hate to go too big betting against this kid, thinking he's still young. He could have definitely made a lot of improvements. And he's dangerous, man. He's definitely dangerous. Last thing I want to mention with Jonas Flok is you look at his last 2 losses, right? He lost to Kenneth Cross. He lost to Bryce Logan. So Bryce Logan's the LFA champion, then over to Bellator, lost to my boy Georgi Karahani's last time out. Still a high-level enough competitor. It's the Kenneth Cross fight. The first round, he loses. He definitely loses the first round, but a good round. The second round, he breaks Cross, man. He's got him tired. He takes him down, dominates him on the ground. Third round, gets him to the ground, beating him up. He is definitely on his way to winning a 29-28. And, the fight scrambles standing, and he eats, a half shot. It's like a half-hearted punch to the temple and just folds him. So, shit happens in MMA. But it wasn't like he got his ass kicked the whole way through. Kenneth Cross is not bad himself. He was on his way to winning. He just got caught. Against Christian Lohsen, you're not going to get caught by a knockout. It would have to be submission based. And his last fight a year ago, mind you, but he couldn't submit a 2-1 opponent and put him in some good spots. Couldn't submit him. Is he going to come now and submit a 34-year-old BJJ brown belt, a guy with twice the amount of pro experience of him, trains at a high level, knows how to do jiu-jitsu? Is he going to catch that guy? Probably not. So as much as I really did want to take a shot on Lohsen, I feel like, Fiok is probably the go. However, if you were super superstitious and you needed underdogs, I think that's the way you go. I think personally I'm going to end up going Kayla Harrison, Bruno Cappelozza, Larissa Pacheco, Dennis Golstov, Henan Ferreira, Marina, I don't even want to say it. Fuck it. Carl Seumanutafa. Mariana Morais, Amanda Leve, and I guess Jonas Flok, right? So that gives effectively one underdog. But yeah, there's a couple like near close to even money fights. You should try to force underdogs. If you feel good about it, take it. If not, pass. And as you can tell, there's a lot of greasy fights in this card. Ones that you probably shouldn't have the most confident level on. However, we're gonna shoot for the stars as we always do, and we're gonna do some PRPs. We're gonna push it the best we can. But yeah, just buyer beware, man. Like it's a sloppy looking card. At least last week around, it was fairly high level mixed martial arts in some of their better weight classes. They actually have a pretty solid lightweight roster. They have some solid guys at those weight classes. But women lightweight, it's a barren wasteland, and the men's heavyweight, it's a barren wasteland. Those filler fights that they've thrown on, like Christian Lohsen versus Jonas Flok, it's like, who knows? It's a 50-50 fight for a reason. It's near even money on both sides because, both guys will have chances. Both guys could win this fight. It's just, who's gonna be a better game day performer. But all the same, the props are, again, they're all over the place. If you got a specific prop question, or I haven't looked at the props, so I couldn't tell you what my favorite props are on the card. But I would suggest Kayla Harrison inside the distance, Bruno Cappelozza knockout, Bruno Cappelozza the under 1.5 in general, Larissa Pacheco decision, Dennis Golstov. I would feel knockout, but I kind of got a snagging suspicion this one ends up going to decision. Like, he doesn't want to take too many chances at the risk of getting taken down. Auntie doesn't want to get chin checked, and he's going to try to slow this thing down at the grind. So, could go to decision. Henan Ferreira versus Stuart Austin. Could see it going to decision, but again, heavyweights, man, heavyweights. I would say Caitlin Young and Marina is going to decision almost for sure. Carl Seumanutafa versus Morais is almost not going the distance for sure. Claudia Zamora versus Mariana Morais is probably going the distance. Barber versus Amanda Leve, probably not. It's all over the place, man. If you got a specific question, hit me up. If not, hopefully I can help you out with whatever it is we're breaking down here. It doesn't look as good as last week, I'll tell you that. However, quitters don't win, and winners don't quit. So let's get after it to the best that we can. Bellator, probably going to have to release it tomorrow because this is the only other thing I'll leave you with. PFL, get it together. Last week they do a Friday show. This week it's a Thursday show. Then the next week will be a Saturday show. Like, it's just all over the place. It's hard to schedule things out. All the same, we'll go PFL tomorrow, Bellator and UFC out on Wednesday, and then hopefully we put the proper combination together. So if you're interested in PFL, or if you're, how long have we been talking at this point? Oh my God, an hour and 13 minutes on a greasy ass PFL card. What am I even doing still talking? I'll leave you with that. Hit me up if you have any questions. Hopefully we make some money. Until the next time, we'll